Hello, everyone, and welcome to the LeanTossup Call of Duty podcast. My name is Robert, and I'm joined, as always, by my co-host, CDLMetrics. Here we are. This is technically the last weekend of the regular season, but this is the last major of the regular season. After this week, only 2 more left. This week will determine who goes to champs and who doesn't, and it's going to determine... There's some interesting races on that, so we'll get right into that. How you doing tonight?
I'm doing well, yeah. We didn't get a chance to record last week just with some scheduling stuff, but yeah, we're back. And yeah, we only have a few more podcasts, really. This one, Champs, and then I'm sure we'll do one for the Esports World Cup, but that's still a few months away. Yeah, excited to talk Major 4. I can't believe we're already here, but yeah, we are, and I'm super excited to talk about it as always.
Yeah. So, moving into our picks for last week, we both had a very good week. I went 3-0, you went 2-1. Very good week for us. The only one you didn't get was Toronto versus Optic. I did bet that one, but that wasn't one of my picks. But other than that, yeah, a very solid week for all of us, for us here across the board. And then even on the combined model plays, had some rough days. Sunday was a bit of a rough day, but Saturday was good, and Friday basically broke even. Carolina let us down on Friday, and then on Sunday, Toronto let us down there against Optic. Just didn't even show up against Optic. But yeah, any thoughts about last week for the results?
Yeah, some straightforward results, I'd say. Like Saturday, our models were both on the big favorites to win easily, and they did. So those weren't really a surprise, but I was a little bit surprised. Toronto was the big one for us on Sunday, and they got swept by Optic, which I guess isn't too surprising considering the narrative around Optic lately has been they're hot and cold. Like on their best days, they can easily beat a Toronto Ultra or a Vancouver Surge or whoever, but they might have days where they struggle against the LAGs and the Cloud9s and the Boston Breaches of the world. Yeah, that was a bit surprising overall, but yeah, I feel like the matches last week were pretty straightforward overall. Yeah, but excited to talk Major 4 for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. So, moving into this, we have a CDL points contest update. So, it is very close here. Doug Levy sits in first place, but very narrowly. He's got a 30-point lead over you, and then just a 35-point lead over me. So, it's very competitive there at the top. And then, obviously... But then basically after that, it's then another another 75 points below then, and then continuing. It's these matches are going to matter a ton. It's every single match here is going to have huge implications for who is moving on or not, right? Like, for example, the problem for me is I have a bit of a blessing and a curse because I've got Thieves Surge in round 1. Now, that's not necessarily the worst thing, because one will go to losers and the other one can start knocking off loser teams, like loser bracket teams. It's not necessarily the worst thing, because they won't have to play each other again until later in the tournament, basically until the loser bracket. And then as well with FaZe, if FaZe were to win out, they could meet in the middle there. There's still a chance that I could run away with this, but it's going to be very close. It's going to be really close. I probably need either a FaZe or a Surge win to win it all, because the delta between first and second is 30 points, right?
25. I think it's 100 to the winner and 75 to second. Okay. But yeah, it's still that's a nice margin from first to second even.
So I probably need, because Thieves won. If Surge had won the last major, I would be probably leading I'd probably be leading, because it would have been Thieves points. That would have been lower on, Doug would have been lower, and then I would have been higher on that. So again, but it just shows you how close this is. This is how close this is going to come down to the last games here. And yeah, Optic is starting to do some stuff, but still though, they're nowhere where they need to be in terms of competitiveness for this. What are your thoughts here for the last couple days, last couple days of this contest we got here?
Yeah, I'm super excited to see how this plays out. And yeah, I think it's anyone's game. Obviously, Doug is the favorite just with the 30-point cushion. I think that is helpful. For most placements, there's about a 15-point gap between one placement and the next placement up from that, which means there's about a 30-point gap between 2 placements apart. So Doug can afford to like have a team or 2 maybe even somewhat disappoint at the major and still have a really live chance to win the whole thing. The interesting thing, I just looked at our podcast slides from Major 4 Week 1, which is the last update we gave out. So at that time, Doug was still in the lead. He was up 15 points on you and the real PD Gaming, and he was up 50 points on me. I've closed the gap a little bit. You guys fell off just a touch, but that's mostly just due to, I think, not having a 4th team, because FaZe, Thieves, and Surge, I'd say, all had good qualifier periods for the most part. For Doug and I, like, the tricky thing is we each have a team that's starting in the losers bracket, but the good news is we don't have any teams that are facing off against each other in winners round 1. And like you said before, like, Thieves and Surge playing each other in round 1 isn't ideal. Like, it would be great if those teams could meet in the winners bracket final, but their path, whoever loses has a relatively easy path to go on a nice little run out of losers bracket. And I know we'll touch on the bracket in a little while here, but the loser of Thieves versus Surge gets Vegas Falcons in round 1, and then should they win that, they're likely to get Boston or Minnesota, it looks like right now, which both of those teams should be pretty big favorites over either of those. So yeah, I think you're well set up. I think you're definitely cheering for, if Surge wins, that's awesome, really, regardless of who shows up in second. Like, that is getting you a ton of points. For me, like, it's tough. If I want to catch Doug, I'm rooting for FaZe and a Thieves collapse, and then hoping that Boston maybe get 1 win and Carolina don't. And then, yeah, if you're Doug, like, you're sitting pretty nice. Like, he has me boxed out on Toronto and Miami. And then, yeah, like, he's got Thieves over FaZe, which I think you'd prefer to have. Yeah, super interested to see how this plays out. It could end in a tie. Like, I do think that's very possible here. I guess it would be a bit of a bummer if it did happen. But yeah, we'll just have to see how it shakes out. But I'd say the 4 at the top are really the only teams that are live to win, unless, like, those next teams down, if Vegas Falcons somehow win Major 4, like, maybe Viken or Wah could jump up a big chunk, but I really doubt that's going to happen. Yeah, we'll see who comes out on top, and we'll definitely be doing this next year. If you're listening, look out for the tweet in 8 months or whenever it's going to be.
Yeah, this was really fun. I think we're definitely going to do this again. And yeah, so league news. So here is the bracket for Major 2. As you mentioned, you've got Miami and Rocker up there at the top. Thieves, Surge, those feed each other. Whoever wins, if Miami were to beat Minnesota, and then the winner of that one, that would be an important match because you want Miami to go as far as possible. Then you've got FaZe, Cloud9, and then Optic, Ultra. I've got FaZe, and you have Ultra, so yours could be meeting in winners round 2 then if they were both to win out. And then the rest of the bracket as such. Again, it was weird because Thieves and Surge had such a slow start to the qualifiers. That's one of the reasons why they're in the position where they are 4 and 5. So it's a bit weird, but we'll have to see how it all plays out. I don't know. A lot of big question marks on some of the teams. We'll get into that here, and we'll just get into that right now here. Now, the interesting thing about this schedule is normally when we have the majors, they usually start on a Thursday, but we are instead doing a dual stream on the Friday. So on Friday, there's 2 streams. There's an Alpha and the Bravo stream. Thieves Surge is on the Alpha stream, and then Miami, Minnesota is on the Bravo stream. Optic, Toronto, and Optic is on Alpha, and then FaZe, Cloud9 is on Bravo. That's after the first 2 rounds. So those are starting at 1:30. They'll start at 1:30 and then 3 and then etc. Those are the usual start times. But then we're going to play through all of losers round 1 immediately. And then we're going to end off at 7:30 with the elimination round 2 game. And then we're going back to an original schedule there starting on Saturday. So it'll be the 5 games on Saturday. And then the 3, 4... Is it 3 or 4? Oh, it's 4.
4 on Sunday. Yep.
Yeah, 4 include one of them, including the best of 7. Yeah, so that's the schedule. A bit different, but I'm actually excited to see what will happen there with 2 streams. That could be cool. We haven't had that in a while. We haven't had that all this year, so we'll go from there. All right, so here's what we're talking about here for clinching scenarios for champs. So for the 8th seed, so Optic, if a top 2 finish, They're 100% in, no matter what the other results are.
Mm-hmm.
If not, if Minnesota get 5th or 6th or worst, plus Cloud9 4th or worst, they're in. Pretty simple. So actually, do you want to explain the paths here for all the teams?
Yeah, and this took me a good bit to work through, and this obviously isn't an exhaustive list of how each team can secure their spot, but these are like the most straightforward. If you're a fan of one of these teams and you want them in champs, like these are good just to keep in the back of your mind of, okay, if Optic finish first or second, they are in. It doesn't matter what Minnesota or Cloud9 do, they're good. If Optic flame out, and it's all up to what Minnesota or Cloud9, place at, as long as, Minnesota finish top 6 or worse, and Cloud9 finish 4th or worse, Optic is in. And those, I'd say, are even a stretch. Like, for Minnesota to get a top 6 and Cloud9 to get a 4th, like, those both need to happen, and I'd say they're very big underdogs to even reach those benchmarks. So, like, if I'm ballpark estimating, like, what are Optic's odds of making champs, I'm probably starting at 90%, and then maybe even going a touch up from there. I think they're very likely, and part of it is due to it's a good qualifier period for them. They got to 3 wins. These other 2 teams got to 2. The interesting thing is Minnesota and Cloud9 both squeaked into the winner's bracket. They each had 2 wins. Boston also had 2 wins, but Boston was the odd team out with tiebreaker procedures. So Minnesota and Cloud9 are at least set up to go on a possible run starting from the winner's bracket, and that helps a ton. So there's that. That does make things a little more interesting, but again, the expectation is that these teams will likely lose early in the tournament and won't get to that 5th, 6th, or 4th, or whatever it has to be. And even if they get to those benchmarks, like, if Optic get top 6 as well, like, that's enough to cover the ground that Minnesota made, or whatever it might be. And one other thing to note, like, Boston, I was thinking about including them in this graphic. They are the 7 seed, and they have 200 points. So there is a scenario where Boston do, completely flame out. They're starting in loser's bracket, so it's not crazy to think that they lose their first game. They might play Minnesota or play Miami in that opening game, and they might lose, and they might just be sitting at 200 points, which Optic could very easily pass them. And if Minnesota or Cloud9 really go on a run, and I think they'd probably have to finish like 2nd or 3rd at that point, or maybe even win it, but that is a possibility for Boston. Again, I think that's very unlikely to happen, so I didn't include them, but yeah, for the most part, we're looking at these 3 teams. Optic, huge favorites to hold that 8 seed, but it's not a lock. So Minnesota, the team right behind them, they're 40 points back. So if you're Minnesota, you can think about it in terms of, okay, what do we have to get if Optic finish in top 12 or top 8 or whatever? So if Optic are top 12, Minnesota 4th or better, which is attainable, I think, and you just have to make sure that you're outplacing Cloud9, because if Cloud9 outplace you, they're going to make up 15 points. They're only 10 back. So yeah, if you're Minnesota, ideally, Optic flame out. They lose their first round game to Toronto. They would drop down to loser's bracket and play Carolina. If they lose that too, now, if you're Minnesota, just make Sunday. If you're in Sunday and Optic do that, you're good to go. But it gets, progressively harder if Optic are placing better. So if Optic are top 8, Minnesota has to get 3rd or better. If Optic are top 6, Minnesota have to be runners-up or win. And then if Optic are 4th, exactly 4th, then if you're Minnesota, you have to win. There is one scenario I didn't include, which is if Optic finish exactly 3rd, Minnesota would obviously still have to win, but then we'd have a tiebreaker because they'd be at the exact same point total. Not sure how that would shake out. I believe it goes to head first, and I don't know off the top of my head which team has won more head-to-heads this year. I don't even know if that's the correct tiebreaker. It might be map count or whatever, but yeah, I think if you're Minnesota, you're really hoping Optic flame out and you can somehow go on a crazy run all the way to Sunday. For Cloud9, it's very similar, but basically take whatever Minnesota has to get and bump it up by 1 place. So they're a good 50 points back of Optic. If Optic finish top 12, they need a 3rd place. And again, right, you can't have Minnesota beating you in any sort of way. If Optic are top 8, they have to be in the champ game, and if Optic are 4th or top 6, if you're Cloud9, you got to win the whole thing, which, again, these are very unlikely to happen, but they're the most realistic paths for these teams. So it's something to keep an eye on. This all could blow up by the time Friday night is over, but if not, it could make for a very interesting who is going to make champs in the last couple of days worth of qualifier or regular season matches. So just something to keep an eye on. But again, I'd say Optic are like a 90+% to hold their spot for champs.
Yeah, this seems very likely. I think it's, yes, there are scenarios where they don't make champs, but they're very unlikely in my opinion at this point. It seems, again, the path for them is so easy. And the thing is, again, these teams are, Minnesota is not in losers bracket, but Cloud9 is. Right, Cloud9 is. Yeah. Oh, no, sorry, no. They're both in winners bracket. But
which makes it a little interesting. Still,
they have very difficult matches. They have very difficult matches to get through. So, again, I'd expect, and again, that gap is not insignificant. So we'll have to see. But it'll be interesting. It'll be something fun to watch. And this could be all resolved by Friday, right? This could be resolved. This could be resolved by Friday night. We're like, okay, cool, champs is set. And I suspect it might be, right, in one way or another. So we'll have to see. But, yeah. All right, moving on. So these are our major wins over expectation, pre-week 1 projections. Both of us did pretty well. You did a bit better than me, so shout out to you on that.
Actually, you did a little better than me. So the deltas that are listed are the average difference between what the team finished with and what you had projected them. So a 0 would be you had every team spot on.
I thought you were measuring R squared. I thought you were measuring R squared. Okay, no, so that's a delta. Okay, that's good. Okay, so I did a little better. Okay.
And sorry, just to shout out. So yeah, we did very well. If you look back on what we had for Major 3 qualifiers, which I think is a good comparison because Major 3 qualifiers and Major 4 qualifiers, we had 5 for each team. So in theory, those deltas should be less because we have fewer games. But I believe for Major 3, we were around the 0.95, 1.0 territory for our deltas. And here we're, quite a bit less than that. So shout out to us. But it does make sense that the more data we get on the season, the more dialed in our projection should be. But for the most part, there's a couple teams where it's clearly they overperformed or underperformed. Miami comes to mind. I think that was one where it's our projections were somewhat favorable to them. You were above 3 wins, I was just under 3 wins, and then they go out and go undefeated. No one really saw that coming, but props to Miami. They look great right now. On the flip side, Thieves underperformed a little. We expected probably a 4-win, maybe a 5-win performance from them, and they come out, fall flat, and only get to 3. But you look at most other teams, and we are on the money, maybe off by a half a win or 0.3 of a win, something like that, especially as you go down the line, Vancouver, Toronto, Cloud9, Minnesota, Boston, LAG, all those teams, Vegas. We are pretty much on the dot with a lot of those teams. Just wanted to shout that out. Carolina did disappoint a little bit, but that not super shocking considering what we saw from them from Major 3. Just wanted to shout us out. I think we did probably the best we've done all year with these.
Yeah, I think we had very good results there. Match preview. So the 4 matches we have, Vancouver versus Thieves. Thieves minus 275 on the money line, Vancouver plus 200. Thieves minus 1.5, minus 120. Surge plus 1.5, minus 120. Thieves 12.5 point favorites in the hard point, 1.5 round favorites in the search, and then there is no spread for the control as of yet. My model likes Vancouver here. Really likes the plus 1.5. And it actually kind of likes the money line, right? I've got this as a very close battle between them. I think this is 50-50. And I think that's right. The more I think about it, the more I realize that, hey, you know what? These teams are very evenly balanced. There really shouldn't be, especially from what we've seen in the last couple of weeks. People are going to say, oh, yeah, the last time they fought off in the major, it was Thieves 4-0 in the major. It's a lot of people are going to point to that and say that, but honestly, these two teams, based on the performances we're seeing, they are very, and I think they played earlier in that major too, right? They played in the
winners final as well, and that was a Thieves reverse sweep. So Vancouver, they had them on the ropes, but after those first 2 maps, Thieves then won 7 straight against them. Some are close, some could have gone either way. The map 1 and the map 2 in the grand finals were both relatively close. But still, like, those are pretty good data points to suggest that Thieves are the better team. And, like, you have Thieves favored ever so slightly. But, yeah, I don't know. Like, I get the Vancouver thing. Like, you can argue that they have been the best hardpoint team for the last month, or last 2 months even, if you want to go back that far. Like, they have been very solid in hardpoint. And generally, if you're playing well in hardpoint, that is a good sign that you're a pretty good team and that you can pick up some searches here, maybe a control. The tricky thing with Surge here is control. Like, we know Thieves are just almost automatic in map 3s. Both controls we saw on LAN back in late April as a 3-0 on Vault, and then another 3-0 on Vault with the winners final and the grand final. So if it's Vault in this series, it's probably a Thieves 3-0, or it's probably a Thieves win at least. And their other control maps are just so solid. So that is doing a lot of the heavy lifting for Thieves match after match. Is if you can just lock down map 3, you just have to split hard points and searches, if not win 2 of them, whatever. It just gives you so many paths for the win. But Vancouver are, like, yeah, they're definitely good enough to maybe pick up a couple hardpoint wins or a couple search wins and scrape by somewhere else. Like, they didn't have a bad qualifier period by any stretch, and neither did Thieves. They both started out a little shaky, but corrected course relatively well. Yeah, I'm just thinking these teams are the same-ish in terms of power that we saw a month ago in late April. And yeah, if that's the case, I do trust Thieves quite a bit. So I get the Surge love, especially if you think their hardpoint is as legit as it has been. If their hardpoint shows up on this Friday, like, they could go on a very nice run. It's tricky, and it's tough luck that they pulled Thieves in round 1 here. And I think they did the same thing at Major 3. I think Surge played FaZe in round 1, and it was like, man, they're a good team, but they got a tough draw, and it's like it's happening again. So, again, if they can get through these guys right away, things are looking up for their prospects of winning the whole thing, but it's a tough ask, I think. But yeah, should be a heck of a matchup right away on Friday afternoon.
Yeah, I'm pretty excited for this one Friday afternoon, yeah. Next up, the other first match we have, Minnesota versus Miami. Miami, actually the exact same line, minus 275, plus 200, minus 120. Miami is a bigger favorite in the hard point, 29.5 point favorites in the hard point, 1.5 round favorites in the search, and then 1.5 round favorites in the control as well. My model loves Miami here. Just absolutely loves them, even likes them on the minus 1.5. Weirdly enough, I'm not as bullish on them in the hard point because my model actually thinks Minnesota is not bad at hard point, but other than that, search, yep, control, yep. It's far more bullish on them in the search and in the control than in the hard point. I don't understand why this is minus 120 for the minus 1.5. It seems like that should be that number is wrong. What are your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, my thoughts are my model is too high on Rocker, and I figured it would be just based on where these teams are trending, right? Miami, if you chop off all the data from early in the season and you just look at this current lineup, like, you can make an argument there are a top 3, top 4 team in the league, and Rocker pretty shaky, a little disappointing to end the season. But I will say, Rocker lucked out pretty nice here. Like, the fact that you are the 8 seed and not the 9 seed, I think that does matter. And the fact that Miami are the 1 seed, I think you much prefer that if you're Rocker. Would you rather play Miami in round 1 or Thieves or FaZe? I think you'd rather draw Miami, even with Miami going undefeated in the qualifier periods. And that's one thing I did want to mention. So Miami 5-0 in the qualifier period. That's amazing. A couple of their matches are a little weird, and it wasn't like the cleanest 5-0 in the world, but it's still impressive nonetheless. I just want to point out, like, they had a series against LAG, who we know are not very good. They lost both hard points to them. Not great, but they won the 2-3-5 pretty easily. But on the flip side, like, they had a series against LA Thieves, and they beat them in a game 5. It was very close, but again, there's just all these matches. They had a match against Vegas where they didn't sweep them. The hard points were a little close. It was around 11. So I don't want to nitpick too much on Miami because a 5-0 record is a 5-0 record, but it wasn't like the most impressive 5-0 in the world. That being said, they should be pretty heavy favorites over Rocker. I think I think the market is about right in this spot. Like, Miami, if I had to give you a number of what are Miami's true odds of winning this series, I think I'd be hovering around that 70% mark. And that's right where the market is. They're just above that. Yeah, it's tough for Rocker, but like, I think you'd rather take this 30% to win in round one and then start your run to pass Optic in that form, as opposed to if they were playing Thieves or FaZe, like Rocker are probably like 10-15% to win those series. A good draw overall, and fortunate that you're in winner's bracket to begin with if you're Rocker. We'll see if they can take advantage of it, but just with the way Miami is playing, it is going to be tough. Miami can bank on pretty much every game mode. It feels like Miami have the slight upper hand in just about everything, hardpoint, search, and control. So yeah, if you're Rocker, maybe get a little weird with the map vetoes, or just, yeah, see if you can squeak by and take advantage of a relatively weak 1 seed in this spot. But yeah, all roads point to Miami probably taking care of business here pretty easily. So we'll see.
Yeah. And then Toronto versus Optic here for the third match of the winner's bracket here. Optic, the favorite, -125. Toronto, -110. Optic -1.5 plus 162. Toronto +1.5 -225. Optic 9.5 favorites in the hardpoint, 1.5 round favorites in the search, 1.5 round underdogs in the search actually. Toronto is the favorite by 1.5 rounds in the search, and then Toronto Optic is 1.5 round favorites in the control. My model is a bit weird here. I see some value in Toronto. My model thinks Toronto should be favored, and it does like Toronto +1.5, but at -225, that's a bit of chasing ghosts there. It likes Toronto in the hard point. It likes them in the search, but it loves Optic in the control. And that makes a lot of sense. Optic has been really good at control. That's like kind of the thing that's been anchoring their kind of run here in the last couple of weeks. And Toronto has not been looking good, particularly in control. What are your thoughts on this one? We just saw Optic 3-0 Toronto online just last week. I think a lot of people are saying, oh, okay, then clearly Optic is better than Toronto, but we have seen Ultra underperform on LAN comparatively, online comparatively to LAN. We've seen that. There was the time they were 3-0'd by Boston. Is this Optic team good yet? Or is this like, okay, they're still improving? Maybe they got Ultra at a good time. What are your thoughts on this one? Because I'm very highly tempted to bet Ultra here.
Yeah, I definitely prefer the Ultra side of things considering where the prices are now. But it is tricky because we just saw this game on Sunday. Or was it Saturday? It was Sunday, yeah. And Texas 3-0'd them. The map one was very close. The map one literally went down to time, which does not happen much. But Optic won 220 to 216. And I was watching back on that because we were heavy on Toronto last week. And we had a map one and moneyline and spread and whatever. And I was watching that map one just thinking, man, if Toronto, like, when a game goes to time and it's 4 points difference, like, it's literally just get the last set of kills, like, trade out the last set of kills effectively, have one guy left in the hill, get 1 point more than the other team, and then step out. Fortunately, Optic were able to break in last second, kill the clock, and that's all she wrote. The map 2 and map 3, yeah, impressive from Optic. Like, I did not expect to see an Optic round 10 victory in search, but they got it done. And yeah, your point about them in control is really legit. Like, Optic 5-0 in control during this qualifier period, and none of those went to a round 5. Like, they were all very comfortable wins. And control is a map where you don't want to put too much stock into it because we are only playing it once. But it can be a big differentiator for these teams. Like, we talk about Thieves all the time being one of the best, if not the best team we have in the league. And I'd say most of their success is driven by control. Like, they are just absolutely dominant in that. And then that makes it just so much easier to split hardpoints, split searches. If you have a hot day, you could easily 3-0 a team if you get those first 2 maps. So, like, I get Optic being the favorite here now, ever so slightly, just based on what we saw on Sunday. But again, this Optic team is just hard to trust. Like, they very easily could come out and get swept by Toronto. That wouldn't surprise me. Like, it's just so tricky with them. Some weeks they're on it, some weeks they're not. But it's undoubtedly been a good qualifier period for them. Like, they went 3-2 which at first glance is, all right, that's solid, but not impressive. But their 2 losses were both in game 5s. They both didn't go their way. They were against weaker competition, but again, that just goes to the point of like Optic, like maybe play down to their competition at times and then play up to it when it's Toronto or Surge or whoever it might be. So yeah, just always a tricky one to try to figure out when Optic is involved. But again, Toronto Ultra have been a consistently good team all year. Last week was not good for them, but I'm more just brushing that off as, okay, they ran into an Optic team that was hot that day, and they played a Surge team that we know is good. They came out with a 3-1 loss in that spot. It happens, but for the most part, Toronto have bounced back every time they've gone down this year. And yeah, I think I'd prefer to take the money line on their side a little, or if you want to take individual maps, whatever it is. I like Toronto Ultra's consistency, and like the tricky thing with them is that a lot of their recent data includes their run at Major 3, which was very impressive, but it had Mercules on the team, which now Optic has Mercules. So that makes things tricky, but to me, like Toronto's ability to adapt on the fly, okay, Major 3 comes along, Beans is not in the lineup, he can't make it to Florida for whatever reason. Let's get this Mercules kid, let's see what we can piece together. And they went on a really nice run, and to me, that just is a credit to the organization as a whole and the players on the roster to be able to make that work. I think if it was Mercules, if it was Beans, whoever, like Ultra was going to go on a run at Major 3. Optic, again, Mercules has helped things, but they've had some figuring out to do at times too. Yeah, tricky one to call. I lean Toronto. It sounds like you lean Toronto. But yeah, again, wouldn't shock me if Optic come out and impress because we just saw them beat this Toronto team a few days ago. Yeah, another really fun one to watch. I think this Alpha stream on Friday I'm probably not going to turn away from it. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm pretty excited about that too. Okay, winners round 1, the last match of winners round 1, Cloud9 versus FaZe. This one is the less interesting of the two between Ultra and Optic, and that FaZe minus 700 the money line at Cloud9 plus 400. FaZe minus 2.5 plus 137. Cloud9 plus 2.5 minus 188. FaZe 35.5 point favorites in the hard point. 1.5 round favorites in the search, and a no control spread as of yet. Yeah, I like FaZe here. I think FaZe has been basically since they lost to Miami, they've been on a bit of a dominant run here with a lot of these games here. So I like the FaZe money line here. I like the FaZe minus 2.5. I really like them in the search and in the control, less so in the hard point. But yeah, that's what I've got here. What do you see here?
Yeah, this one is interesting. This is a stay away for me, first of all. I do think FaZe are heavy favorites, as they should be. Interesting note, right? FaZe went 4-1 in qualifiers. Their one loss was to these guys, and it was a 3-1 loss. So that was a bit of a shocker. I remember us talking about that the following week, being like, what happened here? And yeah, I don't know. FaZe's 4-1 record is impressive. I think if you looked at our expected wins, we were in the ballpark of 4 wins for FaZe. I don't think we would have predicted they lose to Cloud9, but whatever, it happened. And the rest of their qualifier period was nice. But again, with FaZe, it's tricky because a lot of it is off of search and destroy success, which is totally legit. Like, it's important to be good in that mode because, like, you might play it twice and it might be map 5, the crucial wins the match map. But FaZe, yeah, 6-0 in search and destroy throughout the qualifier period. And a lot of those were comfortable wins. Like, to me, that just shows that, like, FaZe right now are the best search team. It's not even really close. Their control was solid as well, but their hard point is still shaky. Like, they're winning about half of them still. In the series against Cloud9, they dropped both of them, and neither were really close. I guess map 1 was a little close, but I don't know. It's been a lot of this sort of up and down hard point, bank on search and destroy and control sort of thing for FaZe. And again, that was the talking point going into Major 3, and I was a little wary of where they might go, and they ultimately did fall short at Major 3. Yeah, I fully expect FaZe to win this, to bounce back from their loss a few weeks ago, but I don't know. Weird things happen. Cloud9 could very easily pull off the upset again if FaZe can't figure out hardpoint. So yeah, if you're FaZe, ideally you'd be able to get these guys done in 3 maps, but if not, I at least want to see some more comfortable wins and some more comfortable hardpoint wins specifically for FaZe. Overall, it's a good draw. If you're Atlanta, like you get the 2 seed, you pull a Cloud9 as the 7 seed, I think you'll take that all day if you're FaZe. And if you're Cloud9, that's a pretty tough draw. Like you'd almost rather be the 8 seed and be playing Miami than the 7 and play FaZe. So it's just how it shakes out when we're only playing 5 qualifiers. But yeah, ultimately I think FaZe get this done. But if their hardpoint isn't up to snuff, I think they might be in a little bit of trouble this weekend for their prospects to win the whole tournament or to make the final. But yeah, I don't know. They're on a whole nother level in Search and Destroy right now, and sometimes you can just ride that wave all the way to a major win. Yeah, stay away, but fully expect FaZe to do well here.
Yeah. Moving on. So, losers round 1, these are projected odds. Boston Breach is basically a plus 137. Basically, they're minus 188 to be eliminated in losers round 1. That's pretty heavily, I'm fairly sure that's pretty heavily penciling in Minnesota. If not, I think that number would be higher. I don't know. I don't have any numbers for this. What are your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, so I think the price there is tricky, and I always like just looking at these to see if it makes sense to bet against these losers bracket teams that have been struggling for the last few weeks, but I really think this price is subject to change. Like, to me, it makes sense at minus 188 now because there is still a little bit of unknown who this team will be, if it's Minnesota or if it's Miami. We expect it to be Minnesota, but if it is Miami, minus 188 seems pretty nice. If Miami were to lose to Minnesota, I think Miami would be more in the minus 200, minus 225 range. Whereas if it's Rocker, and it stays at minus 188, I think I'd love Boston Breach at plus 137 in that spot. To me, Boston and Minnesota are fairly comparable teams in terms of power right now. So if one of them's plus 137, I'll just take that team. So to me, it seems like this is just the price that we're setting now. There is a little bit of indecision on who it could be. If it's Miami, the price will go up. If it's Minnesota, I think it'll be closer to a pick'em. But yeah, ultimately, nothing I really want to take right now. Like the minus 188 for them to get eliminated, I don't love right now. To me, it seems like a fair price, and then it'll adjust based on who loses that winners round 1 game. But yeah, Boston, a weird qualifier period for them. They get the 2 wins, but they lose out on the tiebreakers, so they have to start as the 9 seed. But ultimately, if you're Boston, you're hoping this is Minnesota. If you can get just 1 win in this major, you're getting up to 215 points, that really should solidify your spot for champs. They're already pretty good for champs, even if they lose this. But if you can win 1, you're really locking up your spot, especially if this is Minnesota. That's the team that's somewhat live to still make champ. So if you can just knock them out right now on Friday, you're good to go. Yeah, an interesting one. I think this is probably the most intriguing losers round 1 game we'll get, just based on who we expect to be in these. But yeah, ultimately, I think that minus 188 is priced about right now.
Yeah, I think so. There might be some temptation to take some Boston plus 1.5s in that case. They are playing for their is Boston going to champs or no? No, they are.
Yeah, so
right?
Boston are the 7 seed right now. I was talking about it a little bit earlier with the hypothetical race for the 8 seed stuff. They're the 7 now. There is a real possibility they maybe fall to the 8 seed. But dropping out entirely, it's very unlikely, but it could happen. So, yeah, getting just... You win this, it's 15 more points. If it's a win over Rocker, they're fully eliminated at that point, and you only have to worry about Cloud9 maybe going on a run, or Optic maybe flipping you for the 7 seed or whatever it is. So, Boston, even with a loss here, are still in a pretty good spot, all things considered, but... You get a win on the board here, and you're all but locked up for champs, and probably locked up for the 7 seed at that point.
Yeah. Next up, this one, not much to say about this one here. Of implied odds of minus 2,000 and Vegas plus 750. I think the question here is it going to be a 3-0 or not? Is pretty much the only question I'd have about this. Vegas was hopeful for a bit. They were doing stuff, and then people figured them out, and they've slid back now. And this is very likely their last series of the regular season, and maybe we'll see them. We'll definitely see them at the Esports World Cup. But yeah, I don't have much to say here.
Yeah, they're officially out for champs. We know that now. So they're playing with house money. That's nice, at least. There's no worry about what's next for you. Just go on a run, see if you can get some cash here at Major 4. But yeah, it's about as hard of a draw as you can get, regardless of who this is, if it's Surge or if it's Thieves. To me, yeah, this price is about it's locked in minus 2,000. I don't see it moving much in either direction. We saw them play Thieves a few weeks ago. It was not pretty. They did get one qualifier win this period. It was against Minnesota, Minnesota right now, they're whatever. And it was a game 5, round 11, very easily could have gone to Rocker. And at that point, we were talking about, oh my gosh, Rocker, you just blew your chance to make champs. So yeah, the issue is just maybe you can get a map win here. I suspect, the spread will be minus 2.5. And then the price will be maybe minus 2.5, minus 120, and plus 120, or minus 120 on the other side as well. So yeah, if you're Falcons, hopefully you don't get swept, but it's looking really likely that you will. Tough luck, but maybe they'll surprise us and make a nice run at the Esports World Cup or whenever we see them next time. Yeah, best of luck next year, Falcons.
Second last match here, LAG versus loser of Cloud9 phase. And it's a pretty heavily shaded to Cloud9 for only plus 225. Yeah, I'd say there's not a ton of hope here for LAG. They were looking okay for a bit, and then they've just really fallen off. Boston really killed any sort of momentum they'd have. And they're also eliminated from champs as well. I think the question is going to be, is this like a 3-0 sweep or not, right? I think is the main question here. Is it a 3-0, 3-1? What are we? Well, I think you could, if it was Cloud9, you could even potentially look at a 3-0. I think maybe betting the 3-0 might not necessarily be bad value here.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't love the minus 300 right now. Just assuming this is very likely to be Cloud9 in this spot. That price seems about right, like Cloud9 minus 300 favorites. I suspect the spread will be minus 1.5 and probably juiced in favor of Cloud9, but I don't know. To me, Cloud9 have not impressed much throughout the season. I could see this being a weird series where LAG maybe push it to a game 5 and maybe come out victorious as a decent underdog. So to me, it smells a little fishy, but again, I don't know. We'll see. This price could fluctuate a ton by the time we actually get to this match on Friday afternoon, but at least right now, that price seems about right on either side. I don't know if I'd have a strong lean either way, but to me, maybe LAG would be intriguing. They haven't been good, but they've been pretty scrappy lately, and that hasn't really led to wins, but it has led to some game 5s, which is nice. So maybe they could push it to him game 5 against Cloud9, and if they do that, then I think they could win, but it's pretty unlikely nonetheless. Again, another team that's playing with house money, no pressure really, just see what you can do. And yeah, obviously if it's phase, this is the minus 300 turns into a minus 3,000 probably at that point, or maybe not quite that, but ballpark, yeah, something like that. So yeah, good luck LAG. Maybe you can get a win against Cloud9, but even that is probably a lot to ask for.
Yeah, and then the last match of the losers bracket, Carolina versus the loser of Toronto Optic. Basically, I think since they're both even, I think you could basically just assume either one of them being here, and the minus 600 to plus 350 seems about right. Minus 1.5 would be pretty heavily favored. Carolina to cover plus 1.5 would definitely be plus money, probably plus 120 or something like that. Yeah, I think they'd be pretty heavy favorites in it. I think it's very hard for me to see Carolina losing or winning more than one game there. I think is pretty hard for me to see.
Yeah, I think I might be interested in Ravens at that price if it is Optic. Like what I mentioned with Optic all the time is they're very up and down. If they come out and lose to Toronto early in the day, I think it works more on a day-to-day basis with the up and downness where, okay, you beat Toronto on Sunday, you come out and lose to them on Friday morning. that probably means you're not playing up to par on that day. And if so, like, I think Ravens are still a good enough team to maybe win the series against Optic. And that would make a really fun, like, if Minnesota or Cloud9 could go on a run, maybe the 8th seed is up for grabs in that situation. So if it's Toronto, I think it's a total stay away. A minus 600 favorite seems about right. If it's Optic and they're a minus 600 favorite, I might look to Ravens. Maybe not to win outright. I think that could happen, but again, to push the game 5. But it's really tricky. I feel like Ravens have been the toughest team to figure out the last few weeks, or you can even go back 2 months. Like, ever since they made the change where they dropped Vivid, picked up Rex, we were like, okay, this could work out maybe for their respawn, but their search and destroy might take a step back. And it turns out like just everything has taken a step back. So I guess they're just going to stick with this roster and go to Champs and see if they can figure it out. Or maybe they'll make a last-minute change before Champs comes around, because it just hasn't been pretty for them. But again, there's a lot of vets on this team. I could see them just piecing this thing together and bouncing back at some point. But ultimately, this is a tough game for Ravens, whoever this is. But if it's Optic, I think they have a pretty good chance to force an upset, if not, at least make it tough. That's where I'm at on Ravens. They're just really tricky right now, I think.
Yeah. And then futures previews for odds to win outright and to reach the final. So Thieves is the favorite to win outright at plus 100. FaZe is plus 250. Optic plus 550. Ultra plus 650. Surge plus 750. Heretics 10 to 1. And then we just drop like a stone from 10 to 1 to 200 to 1 for Minnesota, which to me seems way too... Like, I would want a lot more than 200 to 1 to bet Minnesota, honestly. And then, obviously, you get significantly worse prices to reach the final, but they're a bit safer in that case. Looking at to win the major, your model is actually saying that FaZe and Thieves are the play there. They're basically a little bit of value on Thieves to win it all and some value on FaZe to win it all. My model is far less bullish on Thieves. My model is less bullish on Thieves, more bullish on FaZe, but also far more bullish on Vancouver than that. And your model is, we're both very low on Texas. We think Optic is nowhere near as good as the market says they are. And you're closer on Toronto, but I'm a lot lower on Toronto. And I'm also higher on Miami as well. My model thinks Miami could maybe make a run for it. What are your thoughts on your pricing compared to the books?
Yeah, so I think I like that my model is a little above market on both favorites. I think that's about right. Yeah, to me, Thieves are still clearly the best team in the league. I know this qualifier period wasn't great for them, but like their control is almost automatic. To me, their hard point is still probably the best in the league. Maybe they're just barely second to Vancouver with how Vancouver is playing right now, and their search is like legit good too. Like, I don't want to discount their search and destroy at all. I only have them behind FaZe in that mode. So yeah, to me, Thieves are favorites, just barely above 50%, but I think market is about right on that. FaZe, right, have bumped up in my power rankings as well. And I was actually a little surprised to see that I had value on FaZe, but a lot of that is driven off of search and destroy. And right, when you need a team to win the major outright, like, you need some serious horsepower to get that done. And the fact that FaZe are so good in search does help in a best of 7. We'll get that extra search and destroy if it goes to the game 7, and you love being the best search team in the league if it does go that far. So that is giving FaZe a little boost up. Not surprised on Optic being so low. I definitely think my number is too low on them, but I think like Optic, Ultra, Surge, and Heretics should all be on a level plane there, maybe around 10-ish% each, or maybe that's a touch high, maybe 7-8% each. Because like, you can, I think, make a case for any of those teams going on a nice run. It would be pretty unexpected for them to win the whole thing, but in aggregate, like, I don't think it's a bad idea to sprinkle a little on 2 or 3 of those teams and see if any of them come through. And yeah, I really like that you're high on Surge and Heretics, because like I said before, you can make an argument Surge are the best hardpoint team. That speaks fondly of them, and they can probably ride that all the way to a major win. They got very close at Major 3. If they didn't get reverse swept by Thieves, maybe some weirdness happens in that losers final and it's not Thieves, or the vetoes play out a little differently. Who knows? But we know Surge are good enough to handle their own against those elite teams. And yeah, just with the way Miami have been playing the last couple months, to get them at 10-1, and they're the 1 seed, they have a very easy winners round 1 match, all things considered. Yeah, you can absolutely make a case for those teams. Any team outside of that, it's really tough for. If I squint, maybe I can make a case for Minnesota at 200-1, but that's so tough. But yeah, I think ultimately we're on the right track here with maybe take 1 or 2 of these teams in the top 5 or 6 and see how it shakes out from there.
Yeah, and then to reach the finals, obviously very similar numbers. Your model likes Thieves again. We both like FaZe. We both still hate Optic. You like Toronto. I don't. I like Vancouver and Miami, and then and others. But yeah, no, I think it's again very similar things. I think the book has it right having Optic through Miami is clumped up. I think I disagree at the orders of it. I think I'd put Vancouver and Miami more to the front and Optic and Toronto more to the back. But there's very clearly a tier between Thieves and FaZe, those 4, and then everyone else. Like Minnesota is 1%, Cloud9 like 1%. There's very little on those. I think it's mostly correct in that tier list. I would just flip it in terms of I'd flip that second tier. But that's my take on it.
Yeah, totally agree here. I did want to point out that my model does see a tiny bit of value on Minnesota and Cloud9 in this market. So if you want to get crazy, that's how you do it. And that's even with Cloud9. Like, my model is not high on Cloud9, and they're playing FaZe in round 1. And it's still, hey, 80-1 is 80-1. If you want to turn $1 into $80, that is maybe a way to do it, but again, that's asking a lot of them. But yeah, ultimately, to me, I don't know why, but Major 3, these markets were like flip-flopped, where the win outright market was actually better, and now it's flipped again, where this odds to reach the final are just better prices overall in terms of like how much hold the sports books have on these markets. So yeah, like I think you can make a case for any of those. Texas, Toronto, Vancouver, Miami, they're all bunched up in the same region, but again, like I'm directionally on Toronto. You like Surge and Heretics. I think those all make some sense. But also the favorites. Like I think for some reason the books are leaving decent prices on those. Obviously, it's not fun to take Thieves at -250 to reach the final. But I don't know. At least if I'm running the Sims with my model, they're there like 8 out of 10 times. That just goes to their strength. Obviously, their first round is a little tricky with Surge. But should they get through that, their path really opens up and they can go on a nice run. So yeah, to me, it's still Thieves or FaZe, but there's a good group of 4 right behind them that could make a nice run and shake things up a little bit. So yeah, really excited to see how it plays out. But again, just want to remind everyone, this is still Thieves and FaZe that run this league. So that's probably not going to change anytime soon. But if there was one major where we might get some funky results and maybe neither of them show up, I could see it being this one, just with how bunched up those other 4 teams are.
Yeah. Models versus markets. Here is our picks for this week. I've got Miami -1.5 versus Minnesota. I just think this number is wrong. I think Miami should be a far bigger favorite. I'm going to go with Surge. I'm going to go with Surge over Thieves. My model likes them to keep it competitive. I'm going to just ignore the Major 3 final and say that the winner bracket final was a closer representation of it. And I'm also going to pick Toronto over Optic. I know we just saw Optic 3-0 Toronto, but I'm going to say that was due to online, and that maybe when they get on land, maybe Toronto is able to perform a little bit better. We'll have to see. What are your picks for this week?
Yeah, I've got a trio of teams to reach the final, so I can't get all of them right, but I'm hoping maybe 2 of these 3 can come through, and I'm just trusting my model on these. So yeah, my model really likes Ultra to get there. Their game against Optic, right? The books are saying that's a toss-up. I would maybe keep Toronto as a slight favorite despite what we saw on Sunday. And I just think +275 is a good price. They probably won't get there, but their odds to make it don't quite equal that plus 275. So I think that makes a lot of sense. And then I'm taking both of those big favorites to get there. I think at least one of them will probably make it, if not both. As boring as that would be if they both make it, I think that's a very realistic outcome. And these prices aren't horrible. Sometimes we get majors where the favorite is like minus 300, minus 400 to reach, but these are a little depressed from that. So I think they make sense. Hopefully 2 of these 3 can come through. But again, it's tough. I was debating if I should include Miami to reach or Surge. I think you can make a case for those teams as well. But yeah, ultimately going with those 3.
Yep. And then the combined model plays not a ton this week, so only the 4 matches, but Minnesota map 1 and then Toronto Moneyline plus 1.5 map 1, map 2. And then we both actually do phase to win outright and to reach the final. Nice little plus 250 there for phase to win outright. That is it for Major 4. We will be back in some amount of time. We're not sure exactly when it will be because we're going to have to wait on lines and stuff like that. But we will be back with Doug Leby. We will see who I think is, with the exception of the person who has the same amount as me. Shout out to him. He's cool. Actually, I saw him on Twitter. He seems like he's got it going on. He's a good guy. But with the exception of him, the 3 of us who are basically the top 3 in the points contest will be on that podcast. And I'm sure we're going to talk about that. So stay tuned for that. We'll probably do that. I'm going to go with 1 to 2 weeks from now. I think you'll see that you'll probably see it before June. We'll have to see. Either before June or early June. You will see that pretty soon. But yeah, no, other than that, have a good DreamHack Masters, everybody. Yeah.